8:39. It's time to go through the papers now for our third and final round. Joining us this morning, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and political journalist and commentator, Emma Wolfe. Good morning to you both. Again, David, let's start with you. We talk about grooming gangs a lot on GBNEWS.
Yes.
There's a story in the Times today of great concern. A woman invented a grooming gang.
I mean, this is a frightening story. Particularly frightening for those people who believe that if a complaint is made, it must be true, and where basically fairness is often suspended. If you get some hysterical complaint, it's expected that the individual accused of doing bad things will have done them and will be not given much benefit of the doubt. This is rather frightening, even if you just look at the Times, for instance, and you look at the photographs of if we can get the photographs up of... no, obviously we can't.
They're coming, I'm told.
Yeah, they're coming. That's a big one.
They're coming. Yep. We'll just talk about the weather while they're
ourselves. There you go.
And basically, that's her, the complainant, Eleanor Williams. Now, let's look at the next picture.
We've only got that one, I'm afraid.
The only one we've got. You tell us, so when her face is smashed up.
There is a picture of her with her face smashed up, which she says was done by a grooming gang. It appears she did it herself with a hammer.
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Oh, yes. And I mean, look at it. And you have to say to yourself, if someone can do that, that's pretty frightening. Yeah. Because as a result of that, of course, various people were charged with assaulting her. And the lengths to which this woman, we don't know the full circumstances and maybe never will, or if we do, it'll be much later, as to what made her want to do this. But I've always felt as a lawyer, you cannot just accept a complaint at its face value. A lot of people resent it when people who complain of sexual assaults have to be cross-examined about it, but someone has got to test the evidence. This case shows why.
But incredibly rare, these sorts of cases, and I do think sometimes it goes too far when women have been through horrendous traumas to be in the most acute and embarrassing detail grilled by quite aggressive barristers.
But the job of the judge, of course, the job of the judge is to step in and prevent that.
The charges are rare, of course, but the thing that winds me about this, obviously, men's lives, if you read through the evidence, the Asian man's life has been devastated by this, just wants to move on. And it wasn't just an Asian fellow, there was another guy that she accused in a separate incident. So she's a serial fantasist, does herself no favours, and denigrates actual serious crimes. I know you and I have spoken a lot about this before in the past. She's doing no favours to women, is she, by doing this either?
True.
Yeah, but I agree with Isabel. I don't think we should generalise. She's obviously a very troubled individual. As David says, if you can, injure yourself with a hammer and make these kind of facial injuries, I think almost, I would just say she needs help. She needs, and absolutely, of course, you can't be flinging around accusations like this, and it should never be assumed that that the grooming gang or the man or the group accused is guilty. But that's the principle of the law anyway.
Let's move on to a story that gives us a bit more hope. Emma, you've picked here one from The Guardian. The chance of winter blackouts has fallen.
Well, I'm delighted to offer a glimmer of optimism this morning amongst, COVID and cost of living and all of that. We might not think it, but wholesale prices of gas are actually falling, it appears.
They're actually at lower levels than before the Ukraine war.
Yeah, and there's been a really sharp fall in recent days. Mild weather across Europe, across the UK, and also a determination amongst European countries to really get a grip to refill our gas storage facilities and to reduce our very, very damaging reliance on Russian stocks, if not for now, for next winter. So when do we actually see this coming through on our domestic bills? Well, probably it'll be a few months. It'll be until when suppliers start to pass on those falls. So
the reasoning behind that, which I had to explain to me yesterday, is that the government block bought a load of fuel to safeguard supply at a time when the price was high, and therefore it's that usual thing, it goes up like a rocket and falls like a feather. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, as you say, we can't have the risk of blackouts. We hear about the risk of blackouts all the time. I never took them very seriously, but maybe one should take them more seriously.
Well, I was seeing some stats about the windy weather that we've had over the last few days. Actually, wind generation's been on the up as well, which has been good news in terms of domestic supply. So there is a little bit of beacon of light.
It always feels as though they say in a few months. We'll see bills fall in a few months, but let's see. And obviously we've got the energy price cap until April, so we'll see what happens to that then.
Well, you've cheered us up. David, you're going to make us despair about the spare, Prince Harry. The copies of his book coming out next week under tight lock and key.
They are. I know I didn't say I was going to do this, but the Times has got Prince Harry, photo of him, steam coming out of his ears, spare us any more of this, please. And, I mean, how are people going to take this? I mean, the story is that the Prince's tell-all is under tight lock and key. I mean, when you think we're dealing with quite serious things in the world, like, for instance, who's going to be running Russia in the next few months? What's the future of East-West relations? Are people that fascinated by Harry? How often can he tell the story?
Well, I think that he, as someone who worked in publishing for years, this is totally normal to have a memoir like this, an explosive memoir under lock and key. They don't want it leaked. They want to come out and everyone to buy the book. It will be fun. It will be. It's light relief at this time. It's such a dark period. Relief? Well, I mean that it's something that isn't about people dying, people freezing in their homes. It feels, of course, light relief is probably the wrong term. What I mean is it's celebrity, it's fluff. I mean, yeah, it's going to be damaging probably for the royal family. It's distasteful. It's
damaging for him too, one hope.
Damaging for him. It's unedifying for the entire royal family, and I think very much for Harry and Meghan. But I think it's something that isn't, as I say, critical. It's not people being blown apart in Ukraine. It's you know.
I wonder, David, I think the wall of silence from the palace is being rather effective, isn't it? Because they just ignore all, then they'll have nothing to talk about in the future.
I think so. And of course, we don't yet know how wide the book will go. The suggestion in the Mail is that it will cover mysterious elements of the death of his mother, of course, in circumstances that's still never been fully explained. But I think my view is that Charles's reign will be damaged, perhaps fatally, by constant references to Harry and Meghan. And I would feel much more confident about what they're up to if I didn't think that they were making huge sums of money out of this stuff. And it's obvious that the bigger the story, the bigger the money. And I also feel a bit sorry for William. I mean, Charles apparently wants to be very tolerant of his younger son. What about William? I mean, all manner of accusations are being heaved at William. Shouldn't his father defend William? William is, after all, the hope of the monarchy, in a way that Charles isn't, in a way that that Harry isn't. And this nonsense that we now are reading, that Harry's real resentment is that he was treated differently to William. Well, there is an heir and there is a spare.
Yeah,
you don't have some guy, who becomes a sort of an equal. And I just hope that somebody at some point will say, away with these people, enough.
Yeah, I don't think it'll damage his reign, because they'll have to give up. As you said, they can't go on like this. Eventually, they'll run out of steam, they'll get divorced, or they'll go somewhere else. Or,
I think the king's afraid to remove their titles, to cast them off, because then they really will
validate.
Yes, and I think he has to continue to extend olive branches and invite them to his coronation and forgive regardless of the mud that is slung at them, because what's the alternative?
I think the policy of silence at the moment and not responding is far more effective, because what they want attention, they want publicity.
Well,
so just ignoring them is very, very annoying.
Very quickly, here's a story that kind of raised my shackles. As a parent of not so young kids now, I was all for a labour-saving device, but this one is really pushing.
This is on the front of the Times. Apparently, this is a self-driving pram. It's one for exhausted parents everywhere. I know people whose babies will only sleep in the pram if they're being pushed around in the pram. So parents get very, very exhausted. Personally, I favoured the sling. I like the sling, although that destroys your back. There's a self-driving pram. It's called the Stroller Nanny. It's fully motorised. It will help you pushing uphill. It'll hold your coffee. It'll do all sorts of things while your baby's being lulled.
Ludicrous.
Yeah,
plays
you've had
white
a C-section.
noise.
For example, I had a really heavy toddler that I had to try and push around in a buggy with a double buggy with the brand new baby. When I just had a C-section, it was impossible. This would be amazing for that. Also, when you've got a big toddler,
Dads should step in at that point.
Well, I go to work after 2 weeks. I was trying to go do the nursery run for my little one. So, these little inventions.
It costs nearly £3,000, and it's not out till next year.
Ridiculous.
And it only self-drives when it's empty, so it'll only self-drive when you're holding the baby. So actually, I think it promises more than it delivers.
Doesn't it play nursery rhymes or sing them to sleep?
It plays white noise.
Oh, perfect.
We could all sing, or just turn a radio on for your white noise. It's ridiculous.
It's progress. Let
Okay,
it
so
be.
can we? Let's find something more ludicrous. What more ludicrous is there in the?
Rory the
Well,
Prince, Aaron.
I'll tell you what's more ludicrous is that MPs have to wear stab vests. We're going to be talking about that with our guests next, but we have to say goodbye to you. It's been a very lovely Wednesday morning. I know, I'm so sorry.
Too soon.
Cut off on your prime,
You'd be very
David,
welcome
once
to
again.
stay and
Sorry
be
about
part of
that.
that discussion, to be honest, David, because you, having been an MP, why don't you stay and join in on all of that? We'll say goodbye to lovely Emma for now. Thank you both very much indeed.